Hey everyone, this is Elias with RevMatch Media. Today we're going to be test driving the 2019 Fiat 500 Abarth. Or is it Abarth? Abarth? I don't know which one, how to pronounce it, but I can tell you this little mean thing is pretty badass. So it's basically what I've been calling it is like a little gremlin. It's a tiny package, but man, does it have such a mean roar to it. And I've even scared a few people in a parking garage. Guilty of that. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Now, what makes the Abarth so great is this. First of all, you open up the hood and it's pretty obvious that there's something special about this. It's got the red valve cover with the vicious scorpion right on it. And of course, if you take a look a little bit lower, you get to see the little snail that makes everything so much fun in this little car. Now, probably one of my favorite things about this little gremlin, again, we're talking little guy, but big mean attitude. Let's take a listen. Let's give it some revs. That's pretty badass. Now, the car is very well packaged. Even though it's nice and compact, the trunk is so big. I actually have space plenty for both of my camera bags and all the camera gear that you've always seen me film in all the different reviews. It has the Beats speaker in the back, amplifier, but again, it's still plenty of space. So this was actually one of my favorite surprising features of this little guy. So when I told my buddy Mason that I had a Fiat 500 Abarth, however you pronounce it, whichever way, he said, hey, can I tag along? So I said, yeah, sure. So guys, this is Mason. You'll be able to, he's a great friend here in Austin, awesome photographer, motorsports photographer, automotive photographer. So check out his stuff. He's got some cool stuff, and he's done some great shots. So what do you think?
You know I love this car already, though. Yeah. It's so charming. It is so charming. It has so much character to it, and that's what so many modern cars lack these days.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I love seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at it on the outside, and we see that, you know, it stands out from your typical 500. It looks significantly different. The bumpers are good. Yeah, big bumpers. The wheels, these have the 17-inch wheels. You know, beautiful design on them. It's got all the little Abarth scorpions.
Yes.
So the badging is pretty awesome. Like if you were to sit this next to a regular one.
Well, that's the thing. So I had a rental. I told you this off camera. I had a rental 500 one time for about a week, and that's my only 500 experience prior to this. But it was a base model, and you know, it's your standard rental car. This is so much more car. I wish, of course, I had the manual, because the automatic is not my favorite transmission in the world in that car. But no, this car, it's so much beyond, and it has so much character to it. Like the way the dials are all laid out, the steering wheel, the seats with the red stripes on them. It does. It has so much more character that so many modern cars lack these days. Well, that's why I own older sports cars, because they have that X factor that very few cars have.
Yeah, they do.
I love the exhaust. The seats are surprisingly comfortable. Yeah. I am really impressed with the seats in this.
Yeah, so usually, you know, again, like, you know, the outside styling definitely stands out with the Abarth trim as opposed to the standard one. Yeah. When we come in here, yeah, like it definitely is, you know, it's got its little cues of that little extra, the red line on the seat. And yeah, these seats are incredible. Like I'm
really impressed.
Yeah, you know, it's big boy friendly. So those guys that, you know, are bigger, they are very comfortable. Couple of things that I think could do a little bit better. The steering wheel. The steering wheel does feel a little bit oversized. I don't know if just in general or just the psychology of we're in a smaller car.
Yeah.
And everything, I think psychologically I was expecting a smaller wheel, but it is does feel a little bit on the big side. This is the 5-speed manual. The gearing is actually extremely close, if not almost identical, to my 2002 Golf. So the RPMs on 5th gear cruising is a little bit higher. When you're doing about 60 miles an hour, you're about 3,000 RPMs or so. So a little higher. 6th gear would have been great, or just a longer 5th. Probably one of my favorite things in this car is the boost gauge. It's got a cool little boost gauge, and it's got sport, just very obvious there, which when you're in sport, it does go up to about 20 pounds of boost, as opposed to, it does about 12 when you're not in sport mode.
And that's impressive out of such a small 4-cylinder.
It is.
It's so much fun.
And it's funny because when we had the hood open and we were looking at the engine, and you said, "Oh, that's a cool little turbo there."
Yeah.
I couldn't even see. I couldn't even tell that the turbo was literally right in front of my face. And yeah, I mean, it really gets it going. Again, the steering wheel, it's a little bit on the big side. It does have the cool buttons that FCA or Fiat, Chrysler, Alfa Romeo does in the back, where I have my volume buttons. That is such a great touch. It's such a subtle thing, but you know, being able to change the volume with the back of the buttons instead of having to do the thumb war kind of situation, so that's cool. One thing I don't like, I wish they would flip. I don't know if you're able to kind of program that, but the volume button is on the right side, which if you're shifting, it's a little tough to handle. Obviously, you're more likely to lower the volume, as opposed to change the station. And unfortunately, this is the last year, 2019, for the Fiat 500, at least in the US, that we're aware of. It's a shame though, because this little car is fun.
It's a charming little car. I love it.
This little car is so much fun. Now, is it the most practical? No.
But it's not about that. It's not about that.
It really is not. And I think that's what you gotta see this for what it is. I mean, my wife and I were doing the elbow wars. We kept hitting each other, and that was fun. Not really. But you know, it was one of those things where everything else, it has its quirks, but you love it for that.
Yeah, that's what adds the character to the car. No, I love it. Well, and anything that has flaws, like flaws are what makes it. My Lexus, I have a GS, is great. It's a fabulous car. I think it's very well built. Of course, it drives beautifully and all that. But it does lack a little bit, and I need it to be a practical daily driver. So it serves that purpose. But now, this car, of course, has some flaws. But that's what adds the character to it. And the exhaust is great, and it's just so much fun. It's fun in a way that very few cars are these days.
Now, in practicality, it did check off some of the boxes for me. I was surprised. Car seat in the back, surprisingly, the little guy fits pretty well. Obviously, the passenger seat had to be a little bit up, but it was enough for my wife to feel comfortable on that side of things. Again, sideways, we're a little bit, you know, we're struggling there a little bit. Yeah. But he was comfortable with his leg room. I don't know if you could really. Would you say you can fit an adult back there?
Maybe.
It
would not be comfortable for an adult.
No.
It would not be comfortable for an adult.
Now, the trunk, though. The trunk was huge.
For such a small car, it's a very well packaged car.
It is.
I feel like it's a very well packaged car.
It is, and it does have the Beats subwoofer in the back with the Beats amplifier, so it does take up a little bit more space. But it wasn't enough that I really cared about it. It had again, it's one of those things where it has these little things that kind of make it quirky, but you can overlook them. Yeah. Because it has enough space for all my bags. Like, I didn't have any issue, and because the depth of it was so low, it helped me to stack up my camera bags without a problem. It's been a fun little car. You get the looks of it.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's like,
it's just charming. You smile when you walk up to it.
You really do. You really do.
You love it.
Now, it doesn't have, again, the comfort creatures of like remoteless start. Obviously, we have a manual, but you don't have the push button start. So having the key, you know, it's kind of one of those where everyone's doing the push button. So not having that kind of was like, So like a peasant, I had to put the key. I had to put the
turn
key in
it.
and turn it. Oh
So
my!
lame.
What am I gonna do with my life? One thing that's actually really cool, that little tiny mirror. It's got a little tiny mirror for blind spots. It works so well. It's such a little thing that it's that Italian touch.
Yeah.
It's that Italian touch that if you don't like experience it yourself, you don't realize how awesome that little thing is.
As soon as you own a car with it, you don't want to own a car without it.
Totally.
Yes.
And this one has a sunroof, nice and big. You know, it's been cold here in Austin. We were doing about 30 degrees recently. And the seat warmers on this are incredible.
I'm impressed.
There's some cars that you have the seat warmers and they're just hot spots, just really, really hot spots, and it makes it uncomfortable. And you have to turn them on, and you're still cold.
Yeah.
This one does it very evenly, and it's hot. It's hot. It really, it really does the job.
There's nothing about the seats I don't like.
Yeah.
There's nothing about the seats I don't like.
It's comfortable.
It's a great little car.
I can definitely use this on a long-term road trip. Now, when we talk about performance, it's got it. It's not just the fact that it's a quick little car, 160 horsepower out of a 1.4
and a tiny little package.
It's fast, and the gearing, again, it's not the longest, so highway is going to be a little bit on the higher end, but the acceleration is there, and it does 30 miles to the gallon,
which is impressive. For a car with a big turbo on it,
you're never gonna get 30, and the reason why is because you're gonna want to be
in boost all the time.
Be in boost,
exactly.
Especially with this. This is that little fun factor of like you're gonna want to be on the gas the whole time.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many miles to the gallon, but the miles to the gallon are definitely there.
High.
Oh, very high
Very
with this
high.
thing. And cool. Another cool thing with the gauge is when you put it in sport, it does change the gauge a little bit. It is a little tough to read the RPMs because it's got this little checkered flag thing.
You've really got to get used to it.
Yeah.
'Cause it's so different, but that's kind of what makes it cool, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. And so it is a little bit. You have to get used to it. I shift more with my ear because of it. So I've gotten to the point where I can hear, okay, now's my shift point, because it's a little difficult to view. Oh, and this car is so easy to rev match too, especially since I know the gearing.
It's already in your head.
That's the great thing. I have the gearing in my head, so I know my miles per hour. So that's the other thing. I've been going more off the miles an hour with the shifting than the RPMs itself, because it's just so much better. Because it's nice and big too.
Yeah.
When you go into sport mode, it has your percentage of your gas percentage. So how much you're accelerating the gas pedal. So that's pretty cool. And probably my favorite thing is the way that it sounds.
The exhaust is awesome.
Being in a garage, this is the most tempting thing to accelerate. So let's take a listen.
I love the pop when you shift.
Oh, totally.
It has so much character.
This is such it's totally the snap, crackle, and pop.
Yes.
So there's no better way of explaining it, especially since it's in such a little package. And it's mean. Now, it is loud. It is loud though.
You do hear it, but I love it because when you start it up in the morning, especially when it's cold outside, it has a little burble to remind it's a very serious little car. Yeah, it's a racing car. At least it thinks it is, and it's really good job. It does a really good job of trying to convince you that it is.
The little engine that can.
Yes, exactly.
It really is. And it's funny because I had to drop my wife off at the airport at like 3 o'clock in the morning. We turned this on, and she gives me this look like, this thing is loud, like we're gonna wake up the neighbors. So just make sure you're very good friends with your neighbors, because they're gonna know when you're leaving and coming back from work. Now, who's this for? Who would you say, who would buy this car?
Somebody that likes a car because they want a car. If you could only have one car, if you don't have the space to do anything ridiculous, if you don't have one car, that's a daily, that's reasonable on gas, nice to park if you live in a city. Very, obviously this is a very small car, so it fits many places. It's easy to park. It's still a very comfortable car, so it's a nice car to use. But if you want to go, have fun on a nice road on a weekend and get it out a little bit and rev it out and get that pops going, it would be a really fun car. Now, obviously, if you've got a large family or you travel with adults and you commute people around, you chauffeur people, not going to be the car for you. But it's something that's just fun. I think if you don't have one car, I think this is the coolest compromise that can pretty much do anything, especially if you work in a city, if you commute through town and whatnot too, because it's small, it's practical. You can weave in and out, you can get into small parking spaces, get into garages. It's not that low, and because the wheelbase is so short and close to the front, you're not scraping on things like some of the ridiculous sports cars. But for that purpose, I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you're a family, if you have a big family, this isn't the car for you.
Maybe one kid.
One kid.
Small. That's otherwise you're gonna run out of legroom real fast.
Yeah, he's gonna outgrow the car.
Yeah.
But definitely, it's a fun car. This thing has, it's just been a blast. It's a great driver's car.
It's a great driver's car.
I think that's I think the epitome of kind of what you could describe this. It is a great driver's car. So if you like being engaged with the car and just having things like that boost gauge, this is definitely a fun little car. It's also, and I took off the traction control to have some fun. It doesn't fully disengage it because it still kicks in the ESC, but it still does enough to keep you safe, but out of the way.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a great mix there. Like I said, even if I had it turned off. And it's such an easy car to park. I've been parking this thing everywhere. My neighbor texted me and said, I almost parked on top of your little car. Because it's one of those things that when you're like, oh, it's an open space. Oh no, there's a tiny car in there. There's a Miata. And that's what happened to him. And I got the text and he said, I almost, and he has a Subaru Outback, so it's a bigger car.
Yeah.
So that was a fun little thing. But yeah, I love it. For $26,000, I believe, is how this one is equipped.
Too. It's very cheap, and with all of the options and stuff this has compared to the other things that are out there on the market, it's a pretty reasonable. It's a pretty reasonable proposition.
It's a shame.
It's got all the driving things that make it fun.
It is.
But it's still practical enough that you could actually use it.
And it's a shame this is the last year. We're hoping something maybe happens in the future. You never know. You've always seen these cars leave and then come back. And I wonder if there'll be any deals at the dealership to clear out lots, right?
I bet you, especially next year, there probably will be.
So we're excited for that. Awesome. Well, Mason, it was great having you.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Thanks you for joining me. Again, check him out on his social media handles. We are going to, hope you enjoyed our little review, and let's have some fun.
Oh, I love that pop. That's so much fun.
It is so much fun.